The way we think about the roles of IT consultants, of cloud consultants in the world of GenAI is really partnering with companies to build up their vision, to caution them to say, hey, you know what? Don't build another like enterprise database running on rack because, that's not worth your time. That's not worth your effort at this point of time.
Take care of version control and like managing all of the semantics and data.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, like if the consultant's role is to articulate the complexity so yes, it sounds nice in theory, but actually there's a lot more complexity to it. Maybe you need to get, your data correct first, your culture correct first, your internal adoption, a few use case, then we do something like that.
Yeah.
And then, the cost of insurance will be 10 times cheaper.
After a few years.
Yeah, exactly. And you can hire a few more developers to do what you want to do. I wouldn't say it's a few years. I think now the innovation, the tech adoption cycle has actually shortened. So I think for enterprise to get to the next stage of maturity, where I would think about as like rational IT spend, and the next step would be like very strategic bets on, this project is truly meaningful to my company.
Fractional is for world-class consultants in AI, software engineering, product and design. Tomithy plays the role of seeker and investor at ST Telemedia, a VC/PE fund that invests in telcos, data centers, growth-stage tech companies in AI, cybersecurity, and cloud IT. He actively works with target and existing portfolio companies in terms of technical diligence, business strategy, and commercial evaluation via their CTO, product, and engineering teams. He has a deep interest in governance and reliability of AI systems, pushing the limits of generative AI, multi-agent AI systems, evolutionary algorithms, and synthetic biology. Tomithy holds a degree in Computational Biology from NUS, Masters in AI program from SMU, and is currently pursuing a part-time PhD in AI governance at SMU. In this episode, we talk about fragmentation and consolidation in the GenAI space, using GenAI as a business strategy, anti-patterns to avoid when implementing searchable enterprise databases, investing in GenAI, and a lot more. This is your co-founder from Swarm, Alexis Collado. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, Tomithy.
That's right.
Tomithy. Welcome to Fractional. Can you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Tomithy. It's a unique spelling. My dad purposely switched it around so that he wanted something unique for me. I guess I think of myself as different characters in life. One thing I think about a lot is on AI nowadays, spending a lot of cycles there, both in terms of, hey, what are the opportunities there in AI to invest? That's one of it. Second one is if I look at the different portfolio companies that we have, what are the different opportunities to basically upgrade business operation, have new offerings where AI can be applied. Last but not least, I've also decided to take the plunge to basically do a part-time PhD in AI governance. So let's see how that plays out in a couple of years' time.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's
very cool.
Few hats.
For people who don't know, Tomithy is like an OG guy. He has invested in machine learning, in AI, has seen all of the hype cycles, and also studying a PhD. And I think you work on digital transformation for AI in the second largest telco in Singapore.
I'm helping out as part of the process, not the main person driving there.
I see.
So they would have like Nikhil and Ayush driving the transformation.
Got it.
Whereas my role is to, facilitate the conversation between different portfolio companies and also share, based on what I know, the projects I've done, how to best do some of the AI components.
All right. And typically those are, I think those are like RAG implementations, right? And knowledge retrieval, evaluation, those kinds of things.
Yes, that's right. You know all the keywords.
All right. You've been investing, right, in enterprise technology, big data, and machine learning. Before any of the GenAI stuff is came into the picture.
I would say way before, when it's like a research idea, when it's the Gen era. So that's around 2015, 2016.
I see.
When I joined my current team looking at enterprise technology. Yeah.
How did your investment philosophy change over time? Because you have to do your due diligence, right?
Yep.
Like you can't just throw money at people. I
Mhm.
mean, I would love money
Yeah.
from you, but
So you would think that there's some method to the madness, and hopefully there is some method to the madness. So if we talk about how investment philosophy changed over time, I wouldn't call it as much as a philosophy yet, but just my kind of lessons learned over time and how I would do some things differently. So I just give you a few ideas of what I've learned, I guess. The big one over here is macroeconomic matter. So maybe just to take 2 steps back, I am typically the residential geek on the team. So I follow different technology trends quite a lot. If anyone on my team, anyone on senior management has a question on tech, how should we do this? What is this about? Is it even legit? They will come to me and ask me questions. So that's what I do. So what happens is in the earlier stages of my career, I am obviously geeking out at all the technology that I'm exposed to and think, hey, you know what? With the best technology, you'll win. That turns out not to be the case because the world is more complex, commercialization is more complex, and macroeconomics is a factor as well. Meaning that when there's the heydays, the low interest days of the US government, investments is easy to get. So even bad quality projects, bad companies get funded. That's number one. Number two itself, it's basically when the macroeconomy gets bad, you actually need a company that not only knows how to grow, but is also able to sustain itself to the long run. Also, it also affects how we think about valuation internally as well. So yes, we do primarily private investments. So private investments into tech companies, into other companies. What happens over here is that when you do this investment, public companies, they are super responsive to market. That means the share prices just change and that's the market price of things. Whereas for private investments, typically you revalue it every quarter, every year. So the markdown or markup is slower. But then again, as the market sours, internally you'll be thinking of what's a sane valuation to value different things at, and that still affects you in the long run as well, as you rationalize the different investments and think about your portfolio value. So one of the biggest lessons I learned is there's just so much more things out there than just tech alone. Tech now I see as, hey, can you use it as a differentiation? Does what what you can do in tech, does it actually lead to commercial success and commercial differentiation? Then after that, you have to consider the others factor. When I was younger, I didn't think as much about all these things. Yeah.
I see. So like when you were younger as a technocrat, you love the tech. Maybe how I perceive what you're saying is invest for tech's sake, right?
Yep.
But now when the bubble burst and all of the bad projects died,
Yep. Most of the best project, yeah.
Focusing back on the fundamentals, unit economics,
Yep.
making sure you're sustainable or making money.
Yeah, and the right people are running the show. And if you're invested in a company for a long time, chances are the crew that you invested, the senior leadership you invested in, some of the main people will change and other people will come into the picture, some people will be replaced, etc., etc. So at first, if like going in early on in my career, I thought, hey, this is a stellar team, that's great. But I didn't, I guess, pay enough, or rather give enough credit to the fact that actually teams would change. So you have to think about succession planning, more sustainability in the leadership as well. Just that not what you see on paper at that point of time. Another very interesting one. So I always think of myself as having like 1 foot too far in the future in terms of tech itself. So like thinking about DevOps in 15, 16, where it was before, people talk about containerization and all this 3 years later. GenAI, AI as well, like it has always been there, background in the picture. If you look back into 17, 18, 19, probably things like AutoML, data robots type of company will be in the picture. But no one really talked about what GenAI could be because, you still have pretty poor language models spitting out text, that's all. But what happens is on self-reflection, right, while I am 1 foot too far in the future, I realized that I could have done things better if I frame the enthusiasm, frame the potential into things that people are willing to work with at that point of time. Because not everyone sees, with a small spark, a small tangent, like, hey, you know what, containerization is going to be a big thing in 2015. GenAI is going to be a big thing in 2019. Yeah. So one more lesson, I guess, is quite, with the benefit of hindsight, it's, you know what, while technology and potential is cool, position ourselves, solve for what will be cool in the next few years rather than 3-5 years up ahead. Yeah, that's also another big thing for me. Because when I was younger, I guess I pitched a bunch more things that were too far out there. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
More of a futurist like kind
Yeah,
of approach
correct.
before.
Correct. So
Right.
if you think about the whole adoption curve,
Yeah.
I'm pitching basically what your earliest users, your innovators will use, rather than what I guess also is a function of the fund, function of the investment philosophy. We like basically the scaling up phase of it, where the early mass market is.
I see.
By pitching ideas in the innovators part. So there's definitely that disconnect. Yeah.
I see. That's actually very different.
Yeah,
Right? That's
correct.
Those are two.
Your tolerance for risk, your tolerance for error, how you evaluate things is quite different. But that's what I learned after the fact as well. Yeah.
Okay, and then speaking of more short term thinking when it comes to investments, what's on your mind now when you look at the Gen AI startups popping up here and there?
Okay. One, this is just my feeling. So there's different Gen AI maps out there. The last one I saw was let me try to get this number correct. Either 2,000 or 3,000 different startups over there. A lot of different categorizations, right? My sense is that there will be consolidation happening. Not everyone is making money. ML ops, you probably have hundreds of companies trying to do different parts of the value chain of ML ops, for example. So first sense of it is not what's exciting, but we just went through one bumper of hype in, I think, 2022 and 2023. Now, I think there has been enough companies funded during the hype running out of money, enough companies that realize that they have built the same thing and competing, that there will be some level of consolidation. The lucky ones, quote unquote, will be consolidated. The unlucky ones will have to, close their business and do something else. Yeah. So actually that's more top of mind for me rather than what exciting spaces. I'm looking at a few things. Again, I say I'm one foot too far out in the future. So where that happens to be right now is probably your small language models, your agentic models. How should I say? It's like from the consideration of the unit done and the amount of complexity you need to implement a agentic model workflow at a mass majority kind of organization is just too much, too complex. Today, I'm not saying 2 to 3 years down the future it wouldn't be, but today for it to be really worth something. But that model of interaction, there's been a lot of research nowadays showing hey, there's a lot more capabilities around that. There's more robustness. So I think we'll get there, but just not yet.
Not yet. It's still too complex, too many barriers, especially inside of
for the mass market developers, for the mass market implementation team. Yeah.
I see.
Correct.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, get RAG correct first. Then if it's not RAG, just get your basic hey, empower users to use GPT or Gemini or Anthropic correct first. Then move through the steps. Yeah.
I think it's still more in an infancy where it's very educational. Awareness is still developing.
Correct.
People are figuring out what's the ROI of this thing anyway.
Correct.
Should we even do this?
Correct. I think people the thing is, US probably has spent the last 1.5 years learning through a bunch of POCs what's useful, getting a flavor of things. They are now more rational in terms of thinking about what projects to spend on, having a little bit more clarity in terms of their strategy. But still, by and large, we are still in the early phase of adoption.
The dark ages.
Yeah. So I compare that to the cloud, right? It's basically when you moved one or two workload on the cloud and start to say, hey, that looks like something useful. Yeah,
Big
but it's
data.
not a whole cloud strategy. Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, big data. Everybody wants a big data project. It's 10 years ago now. Yeah.
You've done quite a few investments into IT, AI professional services companies, right? They offer data engineering, AI strategy, AI consulting services. I just wanted to ask, what role do you think these experts and consultants play in the ecosystem? And what's your thought process on that?
Okay, I'll answer you in two levels. Right now, the people that are declaring victory, besides, of course, the chipsets and NVIDIA makers, the other bunch of people who are kind of declaring a little bit of early victory in terms of this whole GenAI waves is actually the IT consultants. Because everybody is trying to figure out POC, everybody is trying to figure out IT strategy. So you look at the numbers, I think Accenture is one that has gone public and said, hey, we have 2 billion of bookings, GenAI, right? Other people alluded to having GenAI projects. Microsoft published a long list of successful GenAI projects. Okay, when I said successful, quote unquote, it's because I didn't spend time to look through all the details behind each of this project. I'm sure, they have accomplished what they want, but this laundry list of projects, the big question, okay, for the market, for the main street, for the investors is, do they really translate to monetization, or is it a good flag to plant to say hey, GenAI actually does something?
Is it for demo day?
Yeah, is it for demo day? Is this to convince stakeholders? I think we're still at that stage. No doubt. Okay, to me, it's indisputable that GenAI has a lot of value, especially for knowledge work, automation, some levels now reasoning. But what happens over here, I don't think the monetization story, the ROI story is very strong yet. So that's one level. So consultants do a lot of that. So the way we think about, the way we think about the roles of IT consultants, of cloud consultants in the world of GenAI is really partnering with companies to build up their vision, to caution them to say, hey, you know what? Don't build another enterprise database running on rack, because that's not worth your time. That's not worth your effort at this point of time.
Take care of version control and managing all of the semantics and data.
Yep. Yeah, so basically, if the consultant's role is to articulate the complexity, so oh, yes, it sounds nice in theory, but actually there's a lot more complexity to it. Maybe you need to get, your data correct first, your culture correct first, your internal adoption, a few use cases, then we do something like that.
Yeah.
And then, the cost of insurance will be 10 times cheaper.
After a few years.
Yeah, exactly. And you can hire a few more developers to do what you want to do. I wouldn't say it's a few years. I think now the innovation, the tech adoption cycle has actually shortened. So I think for enterprise to get to the next stage of maturity, where I would think about as rational IT spend, and the next step would be very strategic bets on, this project is truly meaningful to my company. It's probably in the order of 12 to 18 months from when they really first started their first POC, because now they have the examples, the language, the lingo, the experience to talk about things. And I think, so we were at the same dinner last night, quite a few people basically alluded to this kind of educating the team, educating the senior leadership on what GenAI is capable of.
And the senior leadership taking charge, the requirement for senior leadership to actually do it themselves.
Yep, and to see themselves at least, correct. So 10 years ago, right, big data, when Hadoop big data was the thing, every senior leader was like, do big data to me. Then what do you want? I don't know, right? Then after that, the funny part, so this is my jibe always. This is of course, a long ago jibe. So when people were thinking about big data, right, so you ask them, hey, so what do you want to know that merits big data for you to, implement and crunch all the data? They say, oh, I want to know the patterns and trends. I'm like, shocked. Because if you want to know the patterns and trends, if it's such a clear blinking pattern and trend, sampling would do. And the pattern will be really clear for you already. It's only when you want to find the exceptions, you want to do the operational fine-tuning, that you need big data. Anyway, that was the big data world. I think right now we are kind of at this phase where it's about people know there's potential, people know that there's promise, and they know that this will probably offer some level of differentiation for companies. It's only a matter of time before the team itself is rallied enough, get educated enough, and comfortable enough to say, hey, programmatically, strategically, these are the pieces we want in place. So I think that will play out in the next. Depends on countries, depends on region, depends on industry, different complications. But in my sense, 6 to 24 months is probably where we'll move on to the next stage of GenAI. Yeah,
it's very exciting. And things come out every day. Oh my gosh. You can implement something on an enterprise level on GPT-3 or something. And then 4.0 comes out.
Yeah.
the next week or something. And it renders the entire thing useless.
I think now we are more cognizant to build in a way. You routinely test it.
Yeah.
So if a new better model comes out, you swap out the model and see how far you get before doing some tweaks.
I see. All right. And I'm looking forward to how the ecosystem evolves and, how people will adapt to that. What do you think do non-tech companies get wrong, right? When they're only starting to invest in these AI capabilities? Like, what are the red flags or, as you say, anti-patterns?
Okay, so I think two blinking anti-patterns is like a viewer, please don't do this. So one big anti-pattern, as I shared again last night, was building chatbots. Like, this chatbot is probably like 50 to 70% of the projects people would think about when they first know about how good, GPT is, then other models is.
Like customer service.
Yeah,
chatbots,
correct. No,
right?
so what I'm trying to say is don't build a generic chatbot, which most people want to do. If you can be very specific and say, hey, you know what? I only want to scope to internal IT help desk for chatbots, and I only want it to cover system A, system B, system C, and D, and answer nothing else. Then you have a good enough definite project to make it something useful. Otherwise, testing would be very hard because you're testing against so many different degrees of freedom that you don't know what the chatbot is going to respond and how it's going to respond, right? And you're setting up a expectation like this chatbot will do anything for a user, which is the wrong expectation because yeah, exactly. So you don't want that, right? So I think people quickly learn that, right? It's just not another good chatbot. That's one. The other one, again, today a lot of consultants are selling this big idea of searchable enterprise database. So knowledge can be enterprise database, which is your whole entire knowledge management system plus your data, however much you want to throw in. The consultants will say the more the better, but I will caveat against that, right? So basically, one of the anti-patterns now is to sell that promise that all the enterprise data will be freely made available through an AI system. They have to crunch through all the data. In real life, right, what happens is a few things. One, there is a lot of different versioning problems. Dating versioning problems, which version should I rely on, right? That's number one. Number two, it's basically for a lot of organization, the data governance, the role-based access control is actually not set up very properly. So the problem over here is that you don't want finance to be accessing HR, the developers to be accessing finance information, for example. But,
I think Philip gave an example like, oh, I'm a merchant on the store. What's the sales of
exactly
the merchant beside me?
Exactly. So, but the enterprise database projects, a lot of it promises this, right? Then
snake oil.
Just snake oil. Yeah. They sell you the promise. Yeah. And one thing, right, just statistically, the more information you throw within the enterprise database during search time, during reply time, what happens is I'm going to search this entire database. The more data points you search through, the statistically, you have more chances of getting wrong. Even though your semantic search is great, even though your keyword search is great, whatever.
Why is that?
Because the thing over here is, let's say you have let's say you have just one department, right? Then let's call it the HR department. Then you get finance department. Let's say for my current particular search, right, I want to know, like, for HR department, relating to this project, who are the personnel involved? So it's this document, right? But let's say you have finance department inside there as well. What happens is that, hey, you know what? Maybe finance have some reference to this project, and maybe these are also equally important. So I return HR documents to get a finance document. Now, which one should I rely my generation on?
That's so hard.
That's a naive, easy answer, but a naive way to think about this problem. The more similar looking data points you throw at it that's not necessarily helpful for the answer, the harder the search is going to be, the lousier the search is going to be. Yeah.
I see. That's a caveat to all the consultants out there.
Yeah.
And the startups building on this idea. Don't do it haphazardly.
Don't do it haphazardly. There's a method to the madness. My personal feeling is that give it a few years, just like things get better along the way, this thing would probably be ready for prime time a couple of years down the road. The question is, let the consultants and the startup fight through it. Yeah.
All right, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, there's one other big thing as well. So, data governance is a problem. Data privacy is a problem as well. If you just simply throw any data, into it, depending on where you are at for your company in terms of comfort to pass some confidential information onto a third-party commercial large language model service, so third-party APIs on that. It may violate that data privacy confidentiality paradigm that you have, right? So if you build an enterprise database, necessarily if you rely on a third-party LLM for API provider, then you are throwing these documents on that. So again, do you have a good structure to monitor all the documents, all the prompts that's going out there to the third party?
The most probable answer is no.
The most probable answer is no today. And that's why, there's just many layers of caveat over there.
Yeah.
So I think that's one. Then in terms of non-tech companies, non-tech companies getting something wrong, I think they have to think about it as not just a project, but the overall evolution of the business and also as a strategy as well. There's nothing wrong with doing 1, 2, 3, 4 POCs or project just to get a feel of things. But at the end of the day, GenAI is here, the impact is here. Your competitor is going to do it, implement some of this, and you can't afford to lag behind, right? But don't think of it as 1, 2, 3 things that you can tweak and manage, and that's it. I think it pays to pay attention to the space, pays to think about it as a continuous company, cultural capabilities, evolution of a company. The way things are done is different. Like how people are doing things manually before, then everything got digitalized, right? This is the same type of transition in terms of mentality. Yeah, GenAI in my mind, right, will be as ubiquitous as Google search nowadays. Nobody really thinks whether do I need to use a Google search or not, when I need to understand something or search out something. You just automatically do it. I think GenAI would be that level of ubiquity in the future.
But how do you use GenAI in your life in that sense?
There's so many different ways. Companion for coding, the different racks. Yeah.
What else? How about in your day-to-day life?
Brainstorming, generate ideas. Yeah.
I see.
I also like to, use, so this is a shout out for Anthropic's model, use that to play around with animation. So I have a little baby girl. I use it to basically test the limits, of Claude. The other thing is, because it's programming so well, I'm trying to see how complex web animation.
Like animation in CSS or
JavaScript animation.
Okay, got it.
So you can, you edit the CSS property of the element. So basically, use it to build animation. And last time, what used to be hours or days
That's
of project.
so hard, actually, animating stuff in markup.
Yeah.
It takes so much time.
No, but the thing is, Anthropic's coding generation of JavaScript, you can do it pretty well.
Yeah.
And if you have a good way to describe the problem, be very specific in what you want, yes, it does take a number of iterations to get there, but the results are actually quite interesting. Yeah.
All right. And some people are probably making games and
yeah,
stuff
they are. Yeah. If you search it up, right, a lot of games nowadays are made with the help of GenAI. Just to give you one aspect of how powerful GenAI is in terms of game making. So what happens over here is in different games, sometimes there's a specific rule or specific game language that you use. What happens is, if you have enough example of the game language, you can say, hey, you know what? These are the ways this domain-specific, game-specific language or markups are used, game engines. I want you to generate objects. I want you to generate behaviors based on this language, and it can do that for you. Will you get it 100% of the time? Probably not, but it's a lot easier to, generate assets, generate artifacts, generate scripts from there versus just having a developer do it from scratch, especially less experienced one. Because let's say you switch reading platform, switch reading worlds. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
The impact is here, and it's very powerful. What piques your interest these days, when you're doing due diligence for Gen AI companies? Because I know you invest in other things.
Just a caveat that right now we are looking at Gen AI. We think that there is still a lot of hype in this space. No doubt there are good companies there, but there's still a lot of hype. So we are not in active diligence of looking at specific companies, for example. We're following the technology, we're following the research, we're following the use cases. But right now, I don't think we are, that maturity curve, not really to execute in that sense. What piques my interest? I'll borrow an analogy from another investor. So nowadays, people will talk about different models, different things. What I like to see is companies that's able to basically, improve on the AI system like a factory, right? I produce this model, but I have the whole process, the whole team, the whole iteration cycle set up so that the next model comes out even faster, cheaper than before. This one is something that I really like to do. Not like, you spend all the effort, it's a one shot, then after
And then
you
you're
get
done.
you get a reasonable model,
Yeah.
but to ask you to do it again, you don't have the processes to get there. Then that to me is like still, I guess the system, the people, the processes are still immature in that sense. The other thing I like to see over here is, there's just so much fragmentation for GenAI, for MLOps, in terms of the different features within the space itself. I've yet to, for good or bad, I've yet to see things, products with like super clear vision, a complete enough set of products for companies to say, hey, you know what, I just need to buy this and that and I'm okay.
Yeah, because it's hard to Lego block these
But
things together.
in reality, people are Lego blocking, they're using a lot of open source. I don't know. Like, there's no what people would quote unquote think of as platform companies over there. Yeah.
Like, what's the Salesforce for GenAI stuff?
That's right.
Kinda
What's
like
the
that, yeah.
what's the AWS? What's the GCP for GenAI?
Yeah.
And the other thing over here is the cloud providers are also offering increasingly better tools at that space. So if your offering is in parts offered by the cloud, what are you going to do about it? So yeah.
Ecosystem lock.
Correct.
All right. My last question for you, Tomithy, and this has been amazing, by the way, is what's your message to all of the AI consultants and Gen AI builders, operators listening to you right now?
I guess I would again borrow a quote that, was close to my heart just a while back. So thinking that you're late to the Gen AI party is like thinking you're late to the internet in the 1990s. This whole party is just getting started. So there's a lot to learn, a lot to do, a lot to fail at. But I think at the end of the day, if you spend time working at it, I think it would be amazing. Yeah. So
All right.
that's the message, I guess.
It's time to build.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Experiment and build, man.
Yeah. Let's do it. Okay, Tomithy, thanks so much for coming over for the podcast and being with us last night at our Candid Convos.
Thank you. That was an excellent event.
All right.
And thanks for having me here today.
You're welcome.